Today on Bridges, my guest is New York Times best-selling author Mandy Hale, and we're going to talk about her latest book, You Are Enough. Welcome to Bridges. I'm Monica Schmelter, and I'm so glad that you could join us. My guest today is Mandy Hale, and we're going to talk about her latest book, You Are Enough. Mandy, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I always love being here.
Well, it's good to have you, and I love the title, You Are Enough, because I think we all wonder, am I enough?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a huge struggle. I mean, especially in the world that we live in today. I think there's messages on all sides telling us that we're not enough. We're not thin enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not smart enough, we don't have enough social media followers. You know, it's every facet of life. We're hit with these negative messages. So it was really important to me to kind of put the opposite message out there into the world and let people know, just remind them, hey, you are enough right where you're at.
Yeah, and I think that that's a beautiful part of the message, is that right where we're at.
Right.
Because I know my tendency, Mandy, is to think, well, I'll be enough as soon as I lose 5 pounds.
Right, yes.
You know, or as soon as I get married, or as soon as this gets put back together. And really, you're coming at it from a different perspective of saying, right now, this moment.
Right.
But what about, Mandy, what would you say, like, to somebody that is struggling maybe with a mental health issue or with depression? Is that message still the same for them?
Absolutely. I think, and this is actually a huge component of this book. I talk very openly about a season of my life that I went through a couple of years ago where I struggled with clinical depression and severe anxiety. And it's scary for me to open up about that, but at the same time, I felt like it was very important to kind of bring something that's kind of been shrouded in shame and darkness and kind of bring it out into the light and say, hey, you know, I struggled with this too, and you're not alone out there. If you have whatever it may be, whether it is depression or anxiety or some other mental health struggle altogether, I wanted to really just kind of offer a little bit of light and a little bit of hope to people who are going through struggles like that. And I think sometimes, particularly in the church and in the Christian realm, we're kind of taught to believe, hey, you should be able to just pray away the depression or the anxiety, but sometimes it's not that easy.
Right.
I mean, I absolutely believe that God can miraculously heal us of anything we struggle with. But I also think there are times when that's just not the case, when we actually do need to seek medical help. And you wouldn't tell someone with cancer to just pray away their disease. So I think the same goes for mental health as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I've shared very often, you know, on this program that I went to Branch's Counseling Center in Murfreesboro, and I'm sitting there waiting to be seen by one of the Christian counselors. And the woman looked over at me and she said, Monica Schmelter? You're here? And I laughed and I said, yes, and you're here too. I mean, we're all here together.
Right.
And we're all struggling in some facet, I believe, of our lives in this fallen world. And I can definitely remember, Mandy, even 20 years ago, that I would have thought that if you couldn't pray away the depression or get instantly delivered, that you know, you just weren't working hard enough.
Right.
And I've come to understand that that's absolutely not true.
Absolutely.
And that has nothing to do with whether God loves us. Sometimes we just need help.
Right. And I think first of all, I think it's a beautiful thing that you're so open about your own struggles. I think that is speaking to so many people, and that's going to positively impact so many people. And I think that's the thing about it. Sometimes I think that on the other side of everything that I've come through, I've come to kind of look at it as a gift, because I think that we are sometimes, you know, I say in the book, God isn't the author of the pain in our lives, but he also doesn't always, you know, step in, because I think sometimes we are meant to go through these seasons of challenges so we can then turn around and help other people come through it.
Well, exactly. And I think, you know, so many times, and I focused, especially when I'm in a lot of pain or going through a lot of emotional distress or whatever that is, I want that instant deliverance. I want that instant miracle. And yet, one time when I was just reading the Bible and God took me kind of to the creation story, and as miraculous as all that is, the creation story is still a process.
Right.
He could have in 1 second spoke and there could have been darkness, light, separated the water. He could have done all of that, and yet he chose to do different things on different days.
Right.
And then he rested. And so that gives us a picture that while there are the instant miracles, and I love that when they happen, but sometimes he also walks us through a process, and there's great value in that.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's interesting for me because I feel like for years I was talking to my readers and my social media followers and encouraging them and trying to offer them hope in their own journey, singleness and feeling alone and feeling lonely and all these other things. But it wasn't until I actually went through, I found myself on the other side of it, that I was the one who needed to be encouraged. And it really hit me. You know, I feel like I'm going to be able to speak to people with so much more realness and authenticity now because I've actually been in their shoes. And I think people relate to that. You know, if anyone who kind of walks around and portrays that their life is perfect, it's hard to relate to that because none of us have perfect lives. We all have struggles, whether it be, you know, a mental health struggle or something else altogether. So I think that people really, they need to hear that there are people that they may look up to. For you, for example, people who watch this show, I guarantee you there have been so many people who have been encouraged to go and seek, you know, therapy and get help of their own. And that it's okay.
Yes.
That it's not just okay, it's healthy.
Yes, it is. And it will bring great benefit to your life.
Right.
You know, when you think about it, the Bible talks about how iron sharpens iron. So I found that with counseling, I'm able to go with no judgment, say whatever I'm thinking or feeling, and the person doesn't tell me what to do, but they help me sort through that and come to a clearer perspective. I've greatly benefited from it, and I do counseling ever so often. I don't let too much time go by that I don't go back and check in and just make sure that I've got healthy boundaries. When you talk about, in the book is You Are Enough, written by New York Times bestselling author Mandy Hale, and I'm so glad to have you. You talked about sometimes people being concerned about having enough social media followers and all of these pressures that we have in life. And so what happens is our boundaries get eroded when we're trying so hard to please people or to accomplish something. So I found with counseling, it helps me put those healthy boundaries back in place and get a grip on who God made Monica Schmelter to be. And so I say, run to the counseling office.
Absolutely. I mean, I love it. I go to therapy once every 2 weeks. I'm a huge believer in it. I am a huge encourager of everyone out there because, again, it may not be this huge dramatic thing that you're going through, but anyone can benefit from therapy, whether it is just about setting boundaries or learning to let go of a toxic relationship or whatever your issue may be. I'm a big proponent of therapy.
Well, you know, when you think about it, even a relationship breakup or a move, I mean, those kinds of things bring up stresses in our life. They bring up triggers in our life, and we need to be able to walk through those in healthy ways. And you talk about in the book, You Are Enough, because we all go through heartbreak and we go through things and we wonder, am I enough? What are some of the other things you deal with in the book?
Well, the book kind of goes, it carries the reader through my journey and over about a 2-year period. And it starts with a very traumatic incident that my family and I went through. My brother-in-law was in a near-fatal car accident. He actually had to have his leg amputated as a result. It was one of those before and after moments where time was divided. This was life before and this was life after. And that sort of kicked off this 2-year season of just really challenging season of my life where I ended up leaving my first publishing company. So I was kind of adrift in my career. And my grandmother, who I love and adore, she passed away. And I lost a relationship that had been on and off in my life for more than a decade. And then, you know, a friend of mine actually ended up committing suicide. And so it was kind of just one thing after another that left me just in a very, very dark place. And the journey of the book is I wanted to kind of take the reader through it with me, through that process with me, and not just talk about my dark times, but also talk about how I came to the other side of those dark times and how therapy played a big role in that. And it's my hope that people who are going through similar things will be able to see pieces of themselves in their own story, in my story, and that it will perhaps, again, be the light at the end of the tunnel for some people who just can't see one right now.
Yeah, because it can be hard sometimes when we're in a long, dark tunnel to be able to see the end of it. The title of the book, again, is You Are Enough, and it is written by New York Times bestselling author Mandy Hale. When I think about Mandy, just even the journey that you share in the book and the number of events, to have a brother-in-law that had, a near-fatal accident and just dealing with that as a family.
Right.
And he has a wife and, children, and then suicide of a friend. Sometimes in life, I know for me, it just feels like it's never going to end. I've gotten to that place that I just think, okay, I know that my joy is in the Lord.
Right.
But I just don't want one more bad thing to happen.
Right.
And I've really had to learn in that long tunnel to be able to say, through Christ, I can make it through this, even if I don't know what's coming next. Was that a part of your journey?
Absolutely. And I think, there are seasons of life where you don't feel God's presence. And you feel like, where did you go? Did you abandon me? And I think sometimes people are afraid to speak that and to say, oh my gosh, it's, I can't admit that I don't feel God's presence. But that's just the way life goes sometimes. And I talk about in the book my struggles of, okay, where are you, God? Where are you in all of this? And, I even share about how, it is okay to get upset with God. It is okay to cry out and to let him know, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I don't see you in all of this, because God is big enough to handle it. He really, really is. I think he's big enough to handle our doubts, our fears, our even our moments of questioning. And I think what was so beautiful about my journey in this book is that I did find him in some of the most unexpected and some of the darkest places of my life. And it ended up being this sort of tragic and yet really beautiful season of life where I found facets of God that I had never experienced before.
And I think that's so much part of the relationship and the journey.
Right.
When we're on that long, dark tunnel sort of a road.
Right.
It makes me hungry for God. Like when I can't feel his presence and I don't know what he's doing, that's when I really tend to really lean in. Like I just realize, like, I don't have any of this. I have no idea where this is going. And I'll get in that journey and then I'll learn things about him, like about his faithfulness or how steadfast he is. And I think, oh, I learned this in a new way.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, there are times when I couldn't even see that he was at work, but things were happening below the surface. Just for example, the place where I ended up going to seek, it was actually intensive outpatient therapy, ended up seeing such beautiful examples of God's love within this group. And it was this very sort of rough and tumble, rough around the edges, motley crew of people that I went through this very intense group therapy experience with. But it was also where I saw, the love of God in some of the most powerful ways, even more powerful than I've seen in some churches. I think because it was people who were just, they were struggling just to hang on. And to see the way that everyone loved each other and supported each other. It was such a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And to see people love each other when it's just really raw.
Right.
Like not when we're just all dressed up. Not that there's anything wrong with that worshiping at church, but when it is just raw.
Yeah, because you have nothing to offer. You literally have, and this is another thing I talk about in the book, I showed up as Mandy. I just showed up as Mandy. Nobody for the first few weeks even knew I was an author. I didn't have to impress anyone. I didn't have to put on my smiley face. I didn't have to say anything brilliant. I was just Mandy, very sad and downtrodden and going through this terrible time. And everyone just embraced and loved me. And that was such a beautiful experience for me, because sometimes we need to just be in a place that's a safe space. And we're just who we are. We're not our titles. We're not mom or sister or aunt or author or TV show host. Right. We're just Monica. We're just Mandy. And to have people love you just for who you are, it was a very powerful experience. And it allowed me to see where I had felt like I had lost God. he actually showed back up for me in such a powerful way.
Yeah, that is amazing. We've got to take a break. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to take a deeper look into the book, You Are Enough. We'll be right back.
You can purchase a copy of today's show for $15. Call us at 615-754-0039 or send a check to the address on the screen. Please mention the program number on the screen.
Log on to www.ctntv.org, where you can make a prayer request, view our program guide, see who's on Bridges, or even watch one of Monica's latest teachings. Log on to www.ctntv.org.
If you are just joining us today on Bridges, Mandy Hale is my guest, and we're talking about heartbreak, healing, and becoming whole. In Mandy's latest book, You Are Enough. And so, Mandy, we've been talking about how just the faithfulness of God, and how in this book you share some of your struggles and how you've come to the conclusion that we are all enough, that you are enough. And you do share a little bit about online dating.
Yes, there is a lighter side to the book as well. It's not all heavy and intense. I decided a couple of years ago to venture onto online dating, and I had never done any sort of online before, was very nervous, was, sort of skeptical, and I don't really know what I'm doing. But yes, I'm able to actually talk about some of these adventures in the book. And for anyone out there who has wanted to try online dating or is trying to work up the nerve or has sort of, I know there's still a little bit of a stigma attached to it. Hopefully my story will help encourage people if that's something they want to try to, hey, because I always say, I think God can absolutely, bring you your person through any means.
Absolutely.
I know that he brought me my book deal came as a result of Twitter, which was an online. So I'm like, I'm not going to limit God. If he wants to bring me my person through online dating, then I'm all for it. Yeah.
So what do you think of online dating?
I think it has some good and some bad. I mean, just like everything else in life. I think that you have to be prepared to, and I'm not always great at this, you have to be prepared to kind of, be prepared for rejection, be prepared for it not to be this, perfect Hollywood ending type story. I think if you're open and you treat it kind of lightly and just go into it to have fun, I think then you're able to navigate it a little bit easier than if you're like, oh my gosh, I have to meet my person. But I think that's how life is in general. I think the more that we can kind of take our hands off of things and just allow things to play out naturally, the better they turn out. Now, that's a lot easier said than done.
Well, it is, especially when a person has a desire to be married, right? And you're looking for the one.
Right.
And then I think especially as believers, we have that additional, not just the one, but the one that God has for me.
Right.
That's a whole lot of pressure.
It really is. It really is. And especially if, our culture, I feel like the more technology we get, the more and more isolated we tend to be. There's not community as much as there has been in the past. So I think especially for people like me, I work from home. I don't have, a workplace that I go to. I have to kind of seek out community. So I think that it kind of works to be able to just kind of open yourself up to all these other possibilities of people by trying online dating. Now, that said, I think you certainly have to be safe and smart with it. Definitely don't meet anyone in a dark place or invite anyone over to your house before you know who they are. Always make sure I do my, my full social media scan and make sure I know that they're an actual person before I meet up with them in a very public location. I think it really kind of, I don't know, in the modern world we live in, I think it almost takes a little bit of the stress out of feeling like you have to constantly, because, I don't want to hang out at bars and clubs and places like that. So it's like, where am I going to go to meet someone? So it kind of offers this whole new window of possibility.
Yeah. Well, and I think in the world of technology and just the way the world is today, that you have to take precautions regardless. Like even if you were, or someone was at a club or a bar, you still got to find out they are who they say they are.
Absolutely.
And, so much to sift through. So we're talking about today, you are enough. And so this really is a message that you've lived and are living.
It is. And I'm still living it every single day. And my publisher asked me after the book was all done, do you have anything you want to add? Just kind of beef up the book a little bit. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, I think it's kind of done. But then I thought about it and I ended up writing an epilogue. And I talk about how the journey to wholeness and enoughness, it's never done. It's a constant, we're always going to be a work in progress. Yeah. There's going to be days when you're going to wake up and you're going to feel like you could rule the world. And then there's going to be days when you wake up and you just want to stay in bed all day. And I think that part of the process of becoming whole and becoming, accepting that you are enough is learning to accept all versions of yourself. The version that wants to just stay in bed and watch Netflix and eat ice cream all day. The version that, goes out and gets everything done on her to-do list. The heartbroken version, the healing version, the whole version, the sad version, the happy version, every single version of yourself, accepting that you are enough in that moment for that day. I think that's the journey to wholeness.
I do too. And I think that recognition for all of us that it's all true. Do you know what I mean? It's all true. The part of me that doesn't want to get out of bed in the morning, that's true.
Right.
And then I just want to watch a bunch of Netflix and I don't want to talk to anybody, that's true.
Right.
And then those moments that I just really feel like I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And then the Monica who wonders, if maybe God forgot about me yesterday. Or am I ever going to be in a brighter season of my life? And I think that's what you're saying, to kind of accept where we are and believe you are enough.
Right. And I've learned, I didn't always believe this. They always say that, grace for the moment and mercy for the moment. And you'll have, when you find yourself in these situations, you will be enough to face it. And I never really quite believed that until I was put in these various challenging, even life-altering traumatic events. And I found that I'm much more stronger than I gave myself credit for.
Yeah.
And I think that we are. I think that we are so much more powerful and able and eloquent and to face these things. And you do always have God there, even when you don't feel him. He's always there. He's always there beside you.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, Jesus, he went through some of the most horrible pain imaginable, and God didn't rescue him from that.
No.
So I mean, there's going to be seasons where we are going to go through these horrible times and these life-altering, traumatic ups and downs and heartbreaks and losses, and through it all, I think I had to get to the other side of it to realize that I was always enough. I was always enough to deal with everything. Me and God were always enough to deal with anything that came my way.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest message I want people to take out of this book, that they can handle it. They've got this.
Amen. And for us to understand that we won't know how strong we are until we go through it.
Absolutely.
Like, you can't know you are enough unless we go through something that seems way bigger than us.
Right.
And I think about, you mentioned about the things that Jesus went through and that God didn't rescue him. And I think about in the Garden of Gethsemane that he was literally sweating drops of blood because of what was ahead of him. Now, that had to be a feeling of anxiety. Like, that couldn't have possibly been comfortable. And yet, that didn't stop him from trusting God. That didn't stop him from obeying God. And I think that's a part of your message in You Are Enough, that, we've got all this stuff going on in this fallen world, but that we can dare to trust him in the middle of all that.
Right. And I mean, that's the part that I think brought me so much comfort no matter what I was going through, is there's nothing that I can go through, that you can go through, that any of us can go through, that Jesus has not experienced firsthand. No rejection, no loss, no pain. And that was such a comforting thought to me. And I think the two most powerful words in all of Scripture are Jesus wept. He wept. And it's okay for us to weep. And it's okay for us to be sad and to struggle and to go through these tough times, because there will come a moment when it will all make sense. There will come a moment when you'll be out on the other side of it and you'll realize that it was all a part of your process. It was all a part of helping you become more of who you're meant to be. And you're going to be able to help and speak to and encourage so many other people as a result of your own struggles.
Yeah. You know, I was reading this book, and the pastor that wrote it was talking about how historians will probably describe this present time in our culture as the era of anxiety.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my goodness, what a time. Like, to think about that people are just so overwhelmingly finding this to be such an overwhelming, anxious time.
Absolutely.
And I find it to be an anxiety-provoking time. It's like there's stuff on every hand, things that we understand, things that we don't, even like identity theft. You know, one of my accounts got hacked and I had all these false charges on my credit cards. That's anxiety-provoking. You don't know when it will end. And yet, I think to your message, you are enough. Like, we can do this.
Right. Yeah. And I think, you know, anxiety it's at an all-time high. Mental health issues are at an all-time high. Suicide is at an all-time. You see the celebrities and the public figures who are taking their own lives, and it's heartbreaking and so tragic. And I think that for me to have the opportunity to speak to those things and to be put in situations where I came face to face with you know, suicide, with depression, with anxiety. Like I said, it sounds very strange, but on the other side of it, I feel very grateful that I now have this message and I now have this passion to turn around and tell people, hey, you know, if this little book, if something I say in this book can offer you a shred of hope to know that you are not alone, that you are enough, that you've got this, that there is help available to you, then that's all I could ever ask for.
Absolutely, because we all need this message.
Right.
Because we're all, even if people aren't able to verbalize it, we're all thinking it inside of our heads and in our hearts. Am I going to be able to make it through?
Yeah.
Am I in this alone? So these are all the things that we're all thinking about. Thank you for coming and for joining us
Thank you so
today.
much.
So
Thank
good
you.
to have you back. The name of the book again is You Are Enough. And so we'll have all of the information up about this book on our website. We're out of time. We've got to go, but we say goodbye and God bless you.
When I truly turned my heart to the Lord, He took every sin I ever did away from me.
God really is your other half. God, He's the only person who can really, you know, fill those holes and cracks in your heart that you're so wanting someone to fill.
It's no good to have a big dream if you're not putting yourself in motion to go after that.
If you would like to contact WHTN, you can write to the address on the screen or call us at 615-754-0039 or visit us on the web at www.ctntv.org.
The blood of Christ is the only cure. It gets down to the root of every single thing that ails us. There's not an addiction, there's not a generational curse, there's not any root of sin, there's nothing that the blood of Jesus cannot cleanse.
Visit monicaschmelter.com to schedule Monica to speak at your event.
Join the Bridges community on Facebook. Visit Facebook and search for Bridges with Monica. We would love to connect with you.
For more information on a guest, visit our website, ctntv.org.